January 17, 1945. Iwo Jima, 0400 hours. The volcanic sand trembles beneath the weight of 800 men. In the darkness before dawn, the USS Ashland rocks gently 7 miles offshore, her hold packed with bulldozers, graders, rollers, machines of construction that will become instruments of conquest. The men of the 31st Naval Construction Battalion, Seabees, they call themselves, stand in silence, checking their tools one final time. They are not infantry. They carry wrenches, not rifles. Yet what they are about to attempt has never been done in the history of modern warfare. To seize an island still crawling with enemy soldiers, and build in the midst of combat, a bomber runway capable of launching the largest aircraft ever designed for war. Above them, the sky holds its breath. Below, in tunnels carved deep into Iwo Jima's stone heart, Japanese defenders wait. They do not yet understand what is coming. They have prepared for Marines. They have not prepared for what will follow the Marines. They have not prepared for the sound of diesel engines drowning out artillery, for the sight of American construction transforming their fortress island in the time it takes a wound to heal. In 10 days, where there is now only black volcanic ash and death, B-29 superfortresses will lift into the sky. The Japanese High Command has calculated for many variables. They have not calculated for American industry arriving on landing craft. The invasion of Iwo Jima begins not with this construction battalion, but with fire. For 74 consecutive days before the landing, American ships and aircraft have hammered the island. It is 8 square miles of sulfurous rock, a desolate fortress rising from the Pacific, closer to Tokyo than to any American base. The Japanese know its value. So does every B-29 pilot who has limped home from raids on the Japanese mainland with one engine failing, fuel gauges dipping toward empty, knowing that the vast ocean offers no emergency landing strip. Iwo Jima sits precisely between the Marianas and Japan. Whoever controls Iwo controls the air war's future. 22,000 Japanese soldiers have turned the island into a subterranean fortress. They have dug 11 miles of tunnels. They have fortified every cave, every ridge, every yard of volcanic rock. Their commander, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, has instructed his men to abandon the traditional banzai charge, the suicidal wave attacks that have defined Japanese defensive doctrine. Instead, they will fight from concealment. They will make the Americans pay for every foot. They will kill 10 Americans for every Japanese death. This is their calculation. This is their understanding of how the battle will unfold. They have not accounted for the Seabees. The naval construction battalions were born from necessity in 1942, after Pearl Harbor exposed the fundamental flaw in America's Pacific strategy. The Navy had civilian construction workers scattered across remote islands, building bases, airfields, supply depots. When the Japanese attacked, these civilians had no training for combat, no military protection, no legal status under the Geneva Convention. The solution was to militarize construction itself, give builders uniforms, teach them to fight while they build. The men who volunteered were older than typical recruits, skilled tradesmen, engineers, heavy equipment operators, men in their 30s and 40s who knew concrete and steel better than parade drills. Their motto became legend: we build, we fight. By January 1945, Seabee battalions have constructed hundreds of airstrips across the Pacific, from Guadalcanal to Guam. But Iwo Jima will be different. On every previous island, construction began after the fighting ended. On Iwo Jima, there will be no after. The fighting will continue for 36 days, and the building must begin immediately. The strategic calculus is brutal and simple. Every day without a completed airfield is another day. B-29s cannot use Iwo for emergency landings. Another day long-range fighters cannot escort bombers to Tokyo. Another day the air war remains limited by distance and fuel. The Americans need that airfield operational before the battle ends. High Command has studied the logistics, consulted with engineers, reviewed soil samples and topographical maps. The consensus is clear. Under ideal conditions, with no enemy resistance, an experienced construction battalion might complete a minimally functional bomber runway in 18 to 20 days. The 31st Seabees have been given 10. They land on D+4, 4 days after the Marines first hit the beaches. The battle for Mount Suribachi still rages to the south. Japanese artillery still commands the high ground. The beach remains under intermittent fire, and the volcanic sand, loose, black and treacherous, swallows vehicles, equipment, supplies. The Seabees wade ashore carrying surveying equipment alongside carbines. Around them Marines dig into positions, corpsmen tend to the wounded, and the smell of cordite and sulfur mingles with salt air. The Japanese defenders, observing from their elevated positions, must experience a moment of confusion. They watch as Americans unload not ammunition, but bulldozers, not tanks but cement mixers, not assault troops but construction vehicles that dwarf the soldiers operating them. What are these strange units doing? The battle has barely begun. The island is not secured, and yet the Americans are preparing. Lieutenant Commander V.F. Geiger, commanding the 31st Seabees, surveys the designated airfield site. It is a nightmare. The proposed runway must stretch 5,000 feet across the island's narrow central plateau, directly between the front lines to the north and the still contested Mount Suribachi to the south. The ground is covered in volcanic ash that offers no load-bearing capacity. Beneath the ash lies harder volcanic rock, but also pockets of soft soil, unpredictable geology that will challenge every foundation, and everywhere unexploded ordnance from the American bombardment, buried Japanese mines, debris from destroyed fortifications. Before a single yard of runway can be graded, every inch must be cleared, inspected, certified safe. Geiger's orders are straightforward: begin construction immediately, work around the clock, accept casualties as inevitable. The airfield must be operational for C-47 transport aircraft within 8 days, capable of handling fighters within 10, and reinforced for B-29 bombers within 12. The Japanese military planners, studying their maps in underground command bunkers, would consider such orders evidence of American delusion. They have spent months fortifying this island. Their tunnels are marvels of defensive engineering, and the Americans believe they can build a bomber runway in the middle of an active battle in less than 2 weeks. The work begins before the equipment is fully unloaded. Seabees with mine detectors walk the proposed runway path, marking unexploded shells and Japanese mines with small flags. Behind them, demolition teams carefully extract and detonate the ordnance. The explosions add to the general thunder of the battle. Americans might mistake them for enemy artillery. Japanese defenders might count them as successful mine detonations. Only the Seabees know they are the sounds of preparation, of ground being made safe for construction. The bulldozers arrive next, massive D8 caterpillars that weigh 18 tons each. In the volcanic sand, they sink to their treads. The operators gun the engines, black smoke pouring from exhaust stacks, metal groaning as the machines claw forward. Progress is measured in feet per hour. The loose ash must be scraped away to reveal firmer substrate, but the ash is everywhere, 2 feet deep in places, and when the wind blows, which is constantly, it fills in the excavations almost as quickly as they are made. The Seabees adapt. They work in rotating shifts, 24 hours a day, diesel engines running continuously, headlights cutting through darkness when night falls. There is no schedule for sleeping. Men grab rest in 30-minute intervals, lying in foxholes beside their equipment, rifle within arm's reach. On the 3rd day of construction, D+7 in the overall battle, Japanese artillery finds the range. A shell lands among the grading equipment, killing 2 Seabees instantly and wounding 4 others. The work does not stop. Corpsmen rush forward to evacuate the casualties, while bulldozer operators maneuver around the crater, incorporating it into the excavation plan. The Japanese gunners, watching through periscopes from their fortified positions, witness something that contradicts their understanding of combat. The American construction crews do not take cover. They do not halt operations. The wounded are removed, the dead are covered with ponchos, and the machines continue their methodical transformation of volcanic wasteland into geometric precision. This is what the Japanese defenders could not anticipate: the sheer mechanical momentum of American industrial culture applied to warfare. They have fought American infantry, traded casualties with Marines in brutal close combat, witnessed American firepower in its most terrible forms, but they have not seen this: construction as warfare, logistics as strategy, bulldozers as weapons of conquest. Each yard of graded runway is territory permanently seized, ground that cannot be retaken by counterattack because it is no longer ground in the military sense. It has become infrastructure. It has become America. By D+10, the main runway outline is visible from the air, a long scar of darker earth cutting across the ash fields. Graders have smoothed and leveled the substrate. Surveyors have certified the grade to within 3 inches of specification across the entire 5,000-foot length. Now comes the critical phase: surfacing. The volcanic sand and ash cannot support aircraft. The runway requires a stable, load-bearing surface. On mainland America, this would mean concrete, properly mixed and cured, requiring weeks. On Iwo Jima, there is no time for concrete. The Seabees employ an alternative: mast and matting, interlocking steel planks, each 10 feet long, 3 feet wide, perforated with holes to reduce weight. Each plank weighs 65 pounds. The full runway will require over 40,000 planks, laid in precise overlapping patterns, hammered and bolted together into a continuous steel carpet. The matting arrives on LSTs, landing ship tanks, that beach themselves on the black sand. Seabees form human chains, passing the heavy planks hand to hand from ship to shore, to trucks to runway. It is backbreaking labor under fire. Japanese snipers, hidden in the northern ridges, target the work parties. Machine gun nests open up sporadically, forcing men to drop the steel planks and dive for cover. The Marines establish a defensive perimeter around the airfield, but the lines are fluid. The front is everywhere and nowhere. At night, Japanese infiltrators probe the American positions, seeking to sabotage the construction equipment. Seabees stand guard duty in shifts, protecting bulldozers and graders as if they were artillery pieces. The steel planks go down in sections, beginning at the southern end of the runway and working north toward the active combat zone. Each section must interlock perfectly. Gaps or misalignments will catch aircraft landing gear, turning a landing into a catastrophe. The precision required is absurd given the circumstances. Men are bolting steel panels together while mortars fall 100 yards away, while the ground trembles from naval bombardment, while the very air tastes of battle. Yet the work continues with methodical accuracy. The Seabees do not hurry, they cannot afford to. A rushed runway is a useless runway, and aircraft will not forgive construction errors. On the morning of D+14, 10 days after the Seabees first came ashore, Lieutenant Commander Geiger radios to the command ship offshore. The message is brief, almost anticlimactic. Airfield operational for emergency use, can accommodate C-47s and fighters immediately. The reply comes back almost as quickly. Transport inbound, ETA 20 minutes. The Japanese, monitoring American radio traffic from their tunnels, intercept the message. They do not believe it. Their intelligence officers have mapped American construction timelines on previous islands. 18 days has been the absolute minimum. More typically, 3 to 4 weeks. The Americans are broadcasting false information, an obvious deception, perhaps a prelude to some other operation. The Japanese artillery commanders do not prioritize the airfield as a target. There is nothing there yet, cannot be anything there yet. 22 minutes after Geiger's message, a Marine C-47 transport appears from the south, descending rapidly, trailing smoke from battle damage sustained during a supply run to Guam. The pilot has radioed ahead, hydraulics failing, making for EWO on emergency priority. The aircraft drops toward the island, flaps extended, airspeed bleeding off. Marines in foxholes pause to watch. Japanese defenders emerge from tunnels, staring. The C-47 crosses the runway threshold at 90 knots, touches down on the steel matting with a shriek of rubber, and rolls to a stop in less than 2,000 feet. The first aircraft to land on Iwo Jima while the island is still being contested, while Japanese soldiers are still fighting 3 miles away. From their observation posts, the Japanese officers witness the impossible made real. Seabee crews swarm the C-47, assessing damage, beginning repairs immediately. The pilot climbs out, kisses the steel runway matting, and is escorted to a field hospital. Within 30 minutes, the C-47 is refueled and patched. Within 2 hours, it takes off again, loaded with wounded Marines being evacuated to hospital ships. This is the moment the Japanese defenders begin to understand what they are facing. Not just American firepower, or American courage, or American tactical superiority. They are facing American capacity, the ability to project not just military force but industrial civilization itself across 5,000 miles of ocean, to impose order and infrastructure onto chaos, to build bases faster than enemies can destroy them. The runway is a symbol more powerful than any propaganda. It is proof, stark and undeniable, that America fights with resources the Japanese Empire cannot match. In the days that follow, the runway becomes a constant stream of aerial traffic. Fighters land, refuel and return to escort duty over Japan. Transports bring ammunition forward and take wounded back. The Seabees continue working, widening taxiways, constructing revetments, building fuel storage. On D+20, 16 days after the Seabees landed, the first B-29 makes an emergency landing. Dynamite, returning from a raid on Tokyo with 2 engines out and a dying tail gunner aboard. The massive bomber settles onto the steel matting, its 141-foot wingspan dwarfing everything around it. The crew chief, climbing down from the aircraft, stands on the runway and weeps. Without Iwo, without this runway built under fire, his bomber would have gone into the Pacific, all 11 crew members lost. Before the battle for Iwo Jima officially ends in late March, the runway will save over 2,400 American airmen, pilots and crew who make emergency landings that would otherwise have been deaths at sea. The strategic calculus proves accurate. Iwo becomes the unsinkable aircraft carrier, the forward base that makes the firebombing of Japanese cities logistically possible, that enables fighter escorts to protect B-29s all the way to the target and back. The airfield, built in 10 days by 800 men with wrenches and bulldozers, changes the war's trajectory as significantly as any battle. The Japanese soldiers who survive Iwo Jima return to the homeland with stories their countrymen struggle to believe. They describe Americans who build under fire, who treat construction with the same discipline as combat, who land aircraft on runways that did not exist a week earlier. They describe a kind of warfare their military academies never taught. An enemy whose true weapon is not the rifle or the bomb, but the bulldozer, the grader, the relentless machinery of construction that transforms battlefields into bases, that treats every conquered island not as a prize to be held but as a foundation to be built upon. There is a photograph, taken on D+15, that captures something essential. In the foreground, 2 Seabees bolt steel matting together. their dungarees dark with sweat and volcanic dust. Behind them, a marine patrol moves north toward the fighting. In the middle distance, a C-47 taxis for takeoff, and in the background, Mount Suribachi rises, the American flag now flying from its summit. The image contains no dramatic action, no moment of violence or heroism. It is simply work. And yet it represents a truth more profound than any single battle, that America wages war not just with soldiers but with civilization itself, bringing to the battlefield the same industrial efficiency that builds highways and factories and cities. The Japanese understood sacrifice. They understood courage. They understood how to die for their emperor. But they never understood this, the capacity to build faster than destruction, to create infrastructure from chaos, to turn volcanic wasteland into a functioning airbase before the battle is even finished. The runway on Iwo Jima remains. The steel matting was eventually replaced with concrete, expanded and improved. Long after the war ended, aircraft continued to use it. And every time a pilot touched down on that runway, they landed on the labor of 800 men who accomplished in 10 days what military planners said required 3 weeks, who built under fire, who transformed a war by treating construction as combat and machinery as weaponry. This is what totalitarian regimes can never replicate, no matter how disciplined their soldiers or fanatical their resolve. They can mobilize armies, but they cannot mobilize industry with such speed and flexibility. They can inspire sacrifice, but they cannot inspire the kind of practical ingenuity that solves engineering problems under artillery fire. The Seabees did not defeat Japan with their bulldozers. The infantry, the bombers, the submarines did that. But they revealed what defeat meant for Japan, not merely losing battles, but confronting an enemy who builds bases faster than they can defend islands, who treats every landing as permanent, who brings not just guns but graders, not just firepower but infrastructure. The volcanic sand still trembles sometimes when aircraft land, the wind still carries ash, the island remembers, and the runway endures, a monument not to destruction, but to construction, to the American faith that every problem has a solution, every obstacle has a workaround, and even in the midst of war, builders will always triumph over barriers, because building is what free people do. They build even under fire, especially under fire. They build because it is what makes them who they are. They build because a bulldozer, in the right hands, can change the world as surely as a bomb, and because sometimes, in war as in peace, the most powerful weapon is not the one that destroys, but the one that creates.